I've worked very closely with Liverpool John Moores University for a number of years now, and when they offered us the opportunity to get involved in lesson study, we were really interested. We're very keen to develop research practices across the school. So when choosing our lesson study group, I considered members of staff who I thought would be interested in research practices, and initially I asked Ella, who's a newly qualified teacher and teaches in year 1, if she would be interested, as I knew through mentoring her as part of her NQT year that she was very interested in developing personal study and looking at theory and research. She was very keen to become involved. And joined me at the initial training session at John Moores University. Having discussed with her what she was particularly interested in for her class and thought about our school improvement plan, we decided that the person best placed to join us in that lesson study model would be Tanasha, who is our maths subject lead, as we particularly wanted to look at maths and whether or not differentiating groups had an impact upon the children and their learning.
My particular role within the lesson study group, because we had a focus within maths teaching, was to bring maths knowledge. So whatever the objectives were, it was my role to kind of look at what the objective was, how we can break that objective down, strategies we could use to teach that objective, depending, it could be equipment or questions or differentiation, how we could differentiate it, how we could break it down, how we could extend it for challenge, and just kind of bring a maths knowledge. But I am maths lead, but I'm also a Key Stage 2 teacher, so that's where Ella was a great support, who was a year 1 teacher, who knew the levels of the children, who knew their starting points. So we kind of obviously used both of our skill sets there together, obviously with the deputy head, who also has a great knowledge of Key Stage 1 as well, to be able to plan. I wanted to learn how using mixed ability groupings would impact upon the learning within the classroom, and whether or not it was an effective way to organise the children, and what impact it would have upon learning in the classroom as well.
Research told me that mixed ability groups could be a way to support children in their progress and how to improve their independence and their resilience, which was the focus for our lesson study. I chose the pupils that I focused on based on the demographic for our school. So we had one child who represented our pupil premium children, but more able pupil premium. We had one child that represented our SEN, so our special needs children. And we had one child who represented our EAL children as well, because that's the broad demographic, if you like, for our school. So they were the 3 focus children. The impact that the lesson studies had on teacher learning has been, I would say, tremendous, to be honest. I think my practice was quite good anyway, but I think that taking part in this has made me really think about other things that you might not necessarily have thought of when you were on teacher training, for example, or going through your NQT year. Because previously we'd just had them in ability groups, and although I gave the children similar tasks, I feel like in some ways it could have capped their learning. And I noticed that when they were in mixed ability groups, that they were really bouncing off each other and working together, and actually a child that you might not have thought would make X progress actually made even further progress, if you like.
What I learned was that using the mixed ability groupings, it was an effective way to organise the children. It provided support to lower ability children. It enabled higher levels of metacognition from higher ability children as they were supporting lower ability children, and were able to explain their thinking, re-explain their thinking, and embed their learning. That it also increased levels of collaborative working as well between the children, increased dialogue and discussion. As part of it, the collaboration became a key factor, because it's a very important part of mixed ability groupings, and it's imperative for that to be developed in order for it to be effective. So we then started looking at, well, what's collaborative skills that the children have? Did they have the ability to have the collaborative discussions? Did they have the peer alert, the skills to have that kind of dialogue with each other in order to support each other and critically evaluate each other's work and support and give each other feedback? So it kind of highlighted that as well. What probably was the most important thing was actually having the opportunity to try something in the classroom and then taking immediate feedback from children. Well, actually that really worked for me because, or actually that probably didn't work for me quite that well because, or it worked for this child but not for that child. Well, what's the barrier there, or what would we have to do in order to make it work for this child as well?
The impact that Lesson Studies had on pupil learning has been massive. Children's confidence has gone through the roof. I mean, my class were already quite confident anyway, but a child that perhaps could take a back seat sometimes has really, stepped up to the mark. And when they were in their partners, their ability partners on their mixed ability group table, a child that you would think wouldn't be the leader in that pair would sometimes be the leader and then other times take a step back. Whereas I thought the other child might be a little bit more dominating, if you like, in that group. So that was really interesting. And just the conversations that some of them were having, I would never have thought they would have, at the age of 5 and 6, about a maths problem, really going into depth about things. So I think that it has really supported their progress and pushed them further than I would have expected.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest learning experiences for me was recognising that even though somebody may have difficulties with their language, and maths is so language based these days in terms of word problems, by the end of our lesson study, he actually turned out to be the most resilient and to achieve the most through the process, because by putting him in a mixed ability pair, he had somebody who was able to support him with the reading, and once he'd overcome that barrier, he was able to then support somebody who was perceived to be brighter than him with the actual maths. And his sense of satisfaction in terms of the feedback after the third session was tremendous. He felt so proud of himself. He recognised that he'd achieved something that previously he may not have been given the opportunity to. And I think that's a huge learning experience for us as teachers, because we recognise that actually we'd done him a disservice.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of sharing our learning, initially Ella and I came back and discussed with Tanasha what we'd learnt from the initial training at John Moores, and shared with her the research papers that we'd received. So she had an understanding of what lesson study was all about. At the moment, lesson study is in its infancy at our school, and we've used this very much as a pilot model with a view to developing that across the school from September. So at present, we've only shared our findings with our senior leadership team, as we were directly linking this in with our school improvement plan. And our aim from September is that we pick 6 different key points from our school improvement plan and develop lesson study teams that will work on a half-termly basis. So we will share the findings of this pilot with the whole staff in September, and show them how that's worked for us, so that we get that buy-in and engagement from our team. And then we'll look at creating our groups around the key questions that we're looking to develop next year. I think it's the age-old time to get you 3 members of the team together to actually really look at what it is that you want to develop, time to discuss how it's best going to work for the children, and then actually taking the opportunity after the lesson being delivered to think about how that worked, and to give opportunity to really speak to the children that you focused on, so that you're hearing their voice and how that worked for them. Initially this year, I think for the 3 of us, to organise that for 3, we were able with an additional member of staff to make that work for us. For next year, we've actually employed an additional cover supervisor, so we've got 2 cover supervisors, which means that at any point in time we can always cover 2 classes. And if we've got a senior leader, then they would use their management time to be the 3rd person involved in that lesson study. Key messages that I would be giving to other schools in terms of lesson study would be have confidence, take a leap of faith, use the research that's out there that shows you that this works for young people. don't rest on your laurels, because even though something's good, it doesn't mean it's the best that it could be, and we can all learn from each other. Definitely working in a 3 rather than in a pair, to get another pair of eyes on something. When you're doing an observation, to have 2 people observing the same thing, you notice very different things. And I think when you pull that all together, you learn so much more from that experience. And really thinking carefully about who you put in each team, who has got the skill set, who, to bring those things together.
Other key messages for other schools that want to take part in Lesson Study is just have a go. Choose your focus, really narrow it down, really think about what you want to focus on, and then just go with it. Be really precise, because I think if you have too broad a question, I don't think it works. And make sure that your team are chosen for specific reasons.
There are definitely benefits to in-school research. We were able to focus on an area that was specific to our school improvement plan and explore how effective it was with our pupils. So it's not about taking someone else's research and going, this is going to work. It's actually being able to see, well, how does it apply in our setting? How does it work in our setting? How would it need to be refined or changed or adapted to work with our setting, within our setting, and benefit our children? And it gave us the opportunity to do that and then refine it so that it has a positive impact within our classrooms. And it also gave us the opportunity as well to have that professional dialogue based upon evidence within our school that maybe sometimes you don't always have the time to have in as much depth as we could have it, because we put the side apart.